Let's talk about scientific communication. Who cares, right? It's boring, right? You couldn't be any more wrong in this. If you are looking to make an impact with your science and your career, this video is for you. We'll talk about how I see scientific communication, why it's important, a huge problem in scientific communication right now, and how it can help you to make an impact. Hi there, my name is Julia, and let's get into it. So what is scientific communication? Scientific communication typically means, or this is how people usually see it, is how to communicate science to a lay audience, whether this is your sister or your mom or your granddad. Scientific communication is usually taught in outreach programs to really make people understand the value of science. It's also to increase diversity in the sciences to underrepresented minorities, but it's also more important than ever in an era of fake news. People need to understand where to get trustworthy information from, and so that they're not just saying a random thing that they read somewhere, but actually can validate that this is based on research. Why is scientific communication important? So for this particular point, where this is really how to communicate science to a lay audience, it's obviously to make people see the value of science. But here's how I see scientific communication. So from my perspective, scientific communication is to communicate your science to other scientists. And this is how I see it based on my own experience. My training is incredibly interdisciplinary, and it basically means you want to be able to collaborate with labs who are not necessarily in the exact area of expertise, but adjacent to it. And that also means you need to be able to communicate with them. In grad school, I was split between two labs, a computational lab and an experimental lab, and they had very different ways of thinking and very different ways how to communicate. And if you know how to communicate your science to a diverse audience and not just to your peers in that particular subject area, it will really increase the impact of your science simply because other people can actually understand what you're talking about. This comes to writing papers. If you are able to craft the perfect title, your papers are going to be able to reach a lot more people simply because they suddenly know why they should care, why this is important, what you're doing, and what it even means what you're doing. So there will be more people reading your paper and more people understanding your paper, which then they can use to build on top of their science. They can use your insights to build on top of that. And this is really what science is about. We're not just doing science for ourselves. We want to advance our knowledge. We want to understand how things work. We want to develop new things. We want to make people's lives easier. We want to cure diseases. If we know how to communicate our science, not just to our super tight specialty, but to actually people adjacent in a research area, we can actually increase our impact quite drastically. This also obviously goes for a number of citations. If people can actually understand what you're talking about, then obviously they will be able to read it and cite it. All right. My dog is right here. You can't see him, but he is the cutest. Giving presentations. How often has it happened to you that you were sitting in someone else's presentation and you were falling asleep? You had no idea what they were talking about. It was super boring because you couldn't relate. You didn't know what this meant. You didn't have the right expertise. You didn't know why you should even care about those details or what those details even meant. And so there was no value to you. Now imagine a TED Talk. How often have you watched TED Talks and you're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And this is really what scientific communication is about, to know how to present your ideas to a wider audience, no matter what their expertise is. Presenting posters. How often has it happened that you've gone to a conference and you were at the poster session and you read the titles of someone else's poster and you're like, I have no idea what this means, so I better just walk past and not even talk to the person. My research background is incredibly interdisciplinary, and so often did it happen that I didn't even understand what the title was about. It was like, I have no idea what this means. And then further, you can't just say, okay, I'm going to spend 5 minutes per poster, because the person presenting the poster had no idea how to present their poster. You suddenly found yourself engaged in a 30-minute conversation about something that you had no idea about. And so this is not really an effective way to communicate your science to people, which is exactly why I am so passionate about this topic. Because you can really increase your impact substantially if you know how to communicate your science. And especially when you are working in an interdisciplinary area, and subject matter expertise is being much more interdisciplinary nowadays. You cannot study biology without having to take a programming class. If the way you present your science is too technical, you're basically including a lot of people out there that have other ideas, that are thinking differently. And this is exactly where the magic really happens in science, to combine ideas from different areas of expertise. Lastly, getting funding. If you know how to formulate your ideas well and get your ideas on the page and write it in grant proposals or fellowship applications, the chance of your proposals getting funded are actually a lot higher. Obviously, with the proper strategy and the proper aims and methodology and stuff, think about how much easier it will be on the reviewing committee to actually read your proposal and they find your great idea and they can say, oh, I actually have an understanding what they're doing. So let me ask you, what are you doing during your lunch break when you're not meeting up with friends? Are you the type of person who sits alone at their desk? That's what I do. You might want to think about watching a 15 to 20-minute YouTube video while you're having lunch, because you'll learn something new. And just by adopting this simple habit, you could learn so much over the course of a few months. Now, if you do decide to watch a YouTube video, why don't you subscribe to my channel, where I'll spill all the beans of how to keep your sanity in grad school while becoming wildly successful. I have videos coming out every single week, and I hope to keep seeing you on this channel. So now, what is the problem with scientific communication? There's two major problems here, right? So first of all, the first one is from the institution's perspective. There's barely any emphasis on scientific communication, both in terms of classes, as well as for them to actually see the importance of it. So it's rarely taught in classes. If there are classes available, they're often not very well taught. The courses are at the wrong time, or they're not a requirement. Oftentimes there are writing centers available at universities, but the faculty at those writing centers are often trained in literature, journalism, political sciences, social sciences. And I'm not saying that this is wrong, so they know how to write. But the problem is, if a biologist can barely talk to a mathematician, how do you think that's going to go having somebody trained in political science teaching a biology major how to write about biology? And so this is where I come in. My training is in STEM, and I am teaching students in STEM how to communicate their science. So I'm going to film right now. The other problem is from the student's perspective. Oftentimes students are starting graduate school and they're not aware how necessary it is to know how to communicate their science. They don't think that it's needed, or even if they do think that it's needed, they think they're decent at it because during undergrad you could write a class paper, maybe in a weekend, maybe even in an evening. But this is not how it goes in graduate school and in sciences later on to actually write a paper for publication, which usually takes months to years sometimes. And so really the incorrect assumption that things can be done quickly is simply not true anymore. Then the other thing is that most graduate students at the beginning think you learn everything in grad school that you need to know, and you'll learn it somehow either from courses, from the professor. But the problem is, what they don't know is that the institutional problems that I just talked about. So what actually ends up happening very often is that the students will be left pretty much to their own devices to figure out how to write well and how to communicate their science. And because the professors are often too busy to teach their trainees one-on-one, or they're not sitting down with them actually like teaching them, this is the process, this is what you do step by step. Oftentimes they'll just say like one thing, oh, do this, and the student comes back with something that doesn't quite work, and then it goes into iterations of edits, which can take forever. The student is expected to reverse engineer the process of what the professor wanted in the first place. And this just seems like such an incredibly time-consuming process, and it's really not necessary, because in sciences, how you write and publish papers, how you make presentations, there are strategies you can follow. And oftentimes, as a grad student, you don't know that, or you're just learning about it and you're piecing things together and things take so much longer. Which is why, so that you don't have to reverse engineer the process, you can take a course, and we have talked about writing centers earlier on, but I also actually do offer a course, which is called the Zero-To-Published course, where I'll be teaching you the 5-step strategy of how to write and publish your papers in a matter of weeks. But before you click out, I know you're a grad student, you don't have a lot of money, but I do have some strategies where you might be able to get this course for free. So check out the link in the description for that. And I also have plenty more resources available when it comes to writing, when it comes to graduate school. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.